June 1st, 2021. Roll call.
Ahern.
Here.
Bethke. Heisler.
Here.
There
Sorry.
you go. Keough.
Here.
Marks.
Here.
Pentecost.
Here.
Staber.
Here.
Great. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll motion to approve. I'll second.
Moved by Staber, second by Marks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Agenda item number 3, a request to approve a preliminary plat at the northwest corner of West Penn Street and Penn Court. Staff presentation.
Okay, so this is a pretty straightforward request. It's just a preliminary plat to subdivide this larger parcel into 2 lots to accommodate the Scooter Coffee site plan that you'll see on your next agenda item. So clearly commercial area consistent with the future land use map, which is commercial. And so the anticipated use for the property would be consistent with the zoning and future land use. So we did find that the preliminary plat which proposes commercial achieves consistency with the comprehensive plan and the commercial, which is commercial. The proposed use would be consistent with the C2A zoning, and the preliminary plat achieves consistency with ordinance standards, which set forth the design and submission requirements. So the only comment that we really had was there was a concern about locating the fire hydrant too close to the corner for storage of snow, and this past winter showed us why, because most of these hydrants are buried. So fortunately, this property line, this is actually right away at curb, so there is an opportunity to put the fire hydrant behind the sidewalk, but it'll still be in the public right away. So that was the only condition that we had for our recommendation for approval, but we do recommend approval subject to that one condition.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Is there an applicant presentation for this portion at least?
I do see John on the call here, or maybe John with MMS. I see his name, but I don't hear him.
All right, no worries. He's got another opportunity coming up.
I think John,
there you
this
go.
is Mark Holkamp. I am the owner of that, hoping to get that through. John said he had someone else from his office that was going to be on the call tonight.
Okay, is there anyone else who wants to do the applicant presentation? Is there anyone else on the call for that? Okay. All right. Were there any public comments about this?
There were not.
I don't think so. Any questions and comments from the commission? Okay. Like you said, Ryan, it is pretty straightforward. All right. May I have a motion for our recommendation to City Council?
I'll move that the Planning Commission accept the 3 listed findings and forward the preliminary plat to the City Council with recommendation for approval subject to the one condition recommended by staff.
I'll second. Ahern.
All right, motion by Pentecost, second by Ahern. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call.
Pentecost.
Aye.
Staber.
Aye.
Marks.
Aye.
Keough.
Aye.
Ahern.
Aye.
Heisler.
Aye.
Great, motion passes. Agenda item number 4 looks fairly familiar. a request for a site plan approval, also at at West Penn Street and Penn Court. Staff presentation.
Okay, so no surprise that the commercial is, the property is still zoned commercial and the land use is commercial as well, so it is consistent. So we'll just kind of dive into the site plan here. Let me zoom in a little bit. It's primarily a drive-through coffee place, Scooter's Coffee. I was on Highway 1 in Iowa City, and they just recently opened one down there. And if you kind of look at the building, you're going to see some subtle differences, I think. But we really kind of went through this, and the applicant was really good to work with. Really kind of started with the rudimentary site plan, but we added some things that I think will make this unique. Although it's, we're still dealing with some corporate architecture, but I'll get to the elevations here in a second. But namely, we have the primarily the sidewalk connection to the public street, and so that satisfies our pedestrian aspect of it, as well as kind of an outdoor area. I'm not sure that they would accommodate pedestrians. This is primarily a drive-through, but if not, that this would be an area for employees to use and things like that. So let's get down to the landscaping. Very nicely landscaped, which we appreciate, especially on one of our major corridors being Penn Street. So that satisfies our code requirements. And here are the elevations. And again, the applicants were good to work with. But we started with just kind of that one window, but we asked for additional window glazing to provide a little bit more architectural interest. And they were able to provide that on the east and west elevations. Also masonry that you see here and here. And also along here. So the one in Iowa City just has kind of this paneling, if you will, with this, but without these additional window glazing. So we appreciate those little upgrades, kind of add to the uniqueness of this Penn Street corridor. Back out here. So findings, commercial use of the property would be consistent with C2A zoning and the comprehensive plan and the site plans with conditions, and I'll go over those in a second, recommended by city staff would achieve consistency with ordinance requirements for site plan and design standards. Again, same comment with the fire hydrant, so we'll just keep that consistent. And the other was just a minor design detail that we have in North Liberty sidewalks that actually go through the driveways, as opposed to being kind of pouring the driveway first and then having the sidewalks ramp up to it. So those were two very minor comments, I thought. And here is the recommendation that staff is suggesting.
Thank you, Ryan. Is there an applicant presentation for this site plan? Okay, doesn't seem like it. And I'm assuming no additional public comment as well.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, questions and comments from the commission?
Ryan, was there any concern for cars lining up and spilling onto the street, as we sometimes see with these drive-through only, or high use things?
Absolutely, and that's I'm glad you mentioned that. It's a great comment. It was something that we talked about when we reviewed this site plan. Unfortunately, we don't have anything in our code to address what the minimum amount of stacking is. That's something I can look at when I get back into our off-street parking. But the way we left it up to it is if it does become an issue where it goes out into the public street, then we're going to reach out to the property owner and say, listen, you need to solve this problem. One thing I did think about here is you could create kind of an additional loop over here on this side that would go around if there was a problem with stacking. But if I understand the business model as it was described to me, they move you through this line pretty quickly.
Okay, I mean, I just, with some of the issues that we see down in Corvo, especially onto, oh, shoot, a second, the strip, right, with Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, I just, this isn't going to be nearly highly trafficked as that location, as far as the street that it would spill onto, maybe if one car is there. It's just something that I wanted to just see.
Yep, because that's a great comment, and it's definitely something we talked about.
All right. Yeah, I see now. I mean, it does, like, if there is a concern or if that becomes a problem, maybe utilizing some of the other space. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Ryan, can you help me with just a sense of scale of how many cars can be in that drive-through
So
before it spills out?
Yeah, it's hard to pick up, but they drew little boxes on the site plan to kind of show you the amount of cars. And it didn't pick up very well, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, and then 2 as you get up here. So that's 9. And then, the potential for stacking along in their interior parking lot.
Thank you.
Ryan, I had a quick question from your earlier comment to Patrick about possibly stacking in that green space. So I take it that that green space caught my eye. It almost looked intentionally shifted, like they were leaving potential to put something else there, but it sounds like that's not the case.
Not at this time. So we haven't heard any discussions with that. I think probably it would have been unreasonable to the underlying property owner to divide the property in this location and then leave just a very tiny lot that was probably unlikely to be unutilized. But it does provide that opportunity to provide a second loop if we get into an issue with congestion in public streets.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay. May I have a motion for our recommendation to City Council?
I'll move. I move that the Planning Commission accept the 2 listed findings and forward the site plan to City Council with recommendation for approval, subject to the 2 conditions recommended by city staff. I'll second. Ahern.
I love this race to second here. Motion by Heisler, second by Ahern is who I heard. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call.
Pentecost,
Aye.
Heisler,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Staber,
Aye.
Ahern,
Aye.
Keo.
Okay, motion passes. Agenda item number 5, a request for a site plan approval to pave an existing gravel parking lot and add new paved parking. Staff presentation.
So this is Hope Church on Front Street. And you can kind of see in the future land use and aerial map kind of their existing gravel parking lot. We did talk to Hope Church, oh boy, it's been about a year ago, kind of about the improvements that we were going to do to this Dubuque Street realignment. So they mentioned at the time that they were looking at paving their parking lot. So we always appreciate when a non-conforming parking lot comes into and becomes conforming with paving and our landscaping requirements. Here's zoning. It's RS4. Churches are permitted in residential districts. The land use is residential, so the zoning is consistent with the future land use map, and as I mentioned, churches are permitted in that district. So again, another pretty straightforward site plan, and just so existing church shows some areas of sidewalks being replaced. The new standard in the city is gone from 4 feet to 5 feet. And so any replaced sidewalks need to be 5 feet, and that shows up in our recommendation. This southern portion actually will happen by the city when we do the Dubuque Street realignment. But otherwise, it's just a paved area with landscaping. And also have our landscaping plan that shows required trees within 40 feet of parking spaces, as well as the shrubbery that goes around. So we do have 2 findings. Again, the use is permitted in the current zoning, and it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. And staff's opinion that with our review and conditions recommended staff that it would meet city ordinances for site plans as well as design standards. And again, we have 5 conditions. Most of them are just technical in nature, but they feel they're pretty easily fixed, and we anticipate those will be fixed prior to going to city council. And so staff recommends approval of the request subject to these 5 conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Is there an applicant presentation for this one?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Sorry, I was messing with my audio stuff on the last one. I was supposed to be here before too. So if you still have questions on the last one, I can answer them as well. But on this one, I'm with MMS. I'm here to represent or offer any answers to questions you might have about this project.
Great, thank you. Ryan, was there any public comment on this one?
There was not.
All right, questions and comments from the commission. I have a question about phase 1 versus phase 2, and I apologize if I missed this in the packet. Is there a time limit on when phase 2 has to be started after phase 1 for this approval?
No, it's really, you're looking to vest a site plan. And so basically for a site plan to be vested, it has to be substantially complete. I would view if they constructed the improvements with phase 1 that basically that they have constructed or essentially vested the site plan. So that's just the consideration. They didn't disclose to us when the timing was, but just spending time with capital improvements with church where I used to live. I understand that these things always depend on how much fundraising you can do from church members.
Yeah, Ryan's correct. It's mostly funding from church members, and they feel their congregations can grow as well. So once that congregation grows and they can get more money, they'll move forward phase 2 if they have to.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, may I have a motion for our recommendation to City Council?
I can move on this. I move that the Planning Commission accept the 2 listed findings and forward the site plan to City Council with a recommendation for approval, subject to the 5 conditions recommended by city staff.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Heisler, second by Pentecost. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Staber,
Aye.
Pentecost,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Ahern.
Aye.
Keo.
Aye.
Heisler.
Aye.
Motion passes. Agenda item number 6, a public hearing for ordinance amendment requests. Staff presentation.
Since this is kind of written text, I didn't do the kind of the PowerPoint presentation, but I'll just kind of describe it. And I usually try and give you a heads up about these things at a previous meeting, but it just kind of came together rather quickly. It's been almost a year, but Ryan Heyer kind of challenged me and said, hey, I want you to reach out to the colonies and see if first if they might be willing to come into the city, and in order to, obviously they would want to keep the colony pumpkin patch and other activities going out there. And so I met with them, and preliminarily indicated, like, yeah, we, if we're protected and we're able to kind of collaborate and write something that works for everybody, that's something we would consider. The ordinance is the result of that. We also have in there a small edit for the food pantry in there to allow them to do a minor expansion, and I'll talk about that in a second as well. But essentially what you have, and it was challenging. This is probably one of the hardest ordinances I think I've written. And the reason is you kind of, most towns moved from agricultural gravel parking lots and not having standards and things like that to moving into an urbanized area, which you have paved parking lots and those types of things. And so we kind of had to really put our heads together to think, like, how do we allow more of a rural theme in there without, accidentally conflicting with other ordinances. And so I had to do a little bit of writing to address that. And so we created the definition for agricultural experience. You'll see that. As always with ordinances, when we're in there, I take opportunities to make some edits to kind of move the zoning ordinance in the direction I ultimately see it going. And that was doing away with a couple of agricultural definitions and incorporating that into agriculture. We amended the ID zoning classification to allow for the agricultural experience as a conditional use. And it's important to note that the reason it's a conditional use is we don't have an ag zoning in the city. We have ID, which is interim development, but it's meant to be a holding pattern zoning. And I'll give credit to Grant. He actually pointed that out, is if we create an agricultural experience zoning district, which some places do, we potentially have a consistency problem with our long range plan, and we don't want that. So having it as a conditional use allows the underlying zoning to be in place. It allows us to move forward. So you'll see the amendments in the ID zoning, as well as a lot of other cleanup uses that we don't feel are appropriate in the ID. And the bulk of the requirements are in the 170 section, which is special conditions for certain types of uses. And this would have to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And I believe conditional uses also come to you as well. And again, the second part of it was the food pantry. I had talked to them. They were looking at doing kind of a clothing part of their operation, and thought a minor exception would be to allow a portion of their existing outbuilding to be utilized for that. I did talk with them about that, and we had a discussion about scale. And really, when you have a food pantry in a residential district, which the church is, or it's actually zoned ID, you want to be concerned about the scale of it and that it's not too big. So I still think that the scale that's being discussed is appropriate. We did talk about that if they do feel that they are going to grow into something much bigger, that we probably need to start talking about a commercial location in the future. So this was a way to fix kind of a need that they have in the short term, and then we'll continue those discussions long term. But I have the ordinance that I can pull up if we have specific questions about it.
And Ryan, if I can, Madam Chairperson, if I can chime in here real quick, I believe, Ryan, that there was an amendment or a minor thing that was excluded from this that we wanted to probably talk about real quickly. Can you speak to that, please?
Yep. Thank you very much, Grant. There was a portion of the ordinance that I failed to include some language, and that language was it allows value added production of things grown on or off site. I wanted to add, I neglected to add the following sentence that I sent email to you earlier, but that's to protect the city essentially. And so we added a sentence that said basically, this is what we're thinking. It includes but not limited to, you know, produce, flowers, and trees and things like that. Thank you, Grant.
And just to finish up that thought, the reason I mentioned that, commission folks, is that in your commission bylaws and rules, we will need a roll call vote to modify this agenda item to correct that clerical error. That I'm calling that a clerical oversight. I knew that was supposed to be in here. It didn't make it in there, and we would need a roll call vote from you to amend this agenda item to incorporate and to correct that clerical error. And so I would suggest, if possible, to do that, and then you can discuss the amended item if you're willing to do so.
So Grant, would it make sense to do that roll call vote now?
Yes, ma'am. I believe it would.
Okay.
And I am terrible at showing my screen, but I did send a motion to Ryan. Thank you, sir. That he might have, I sent him an email here just a minute ago that he might be able to pull up that talks about what that motion might look like.
That was my next question.
Do you have a visual of what the exact correction would be? Do you have that written up in here?
I'm hitting spacebar on the wrong screen. I do not. I know where it is. Do you happen to have that handy, Ryan?
Yeah, it's right here. It's under C, so it's 170.071C, and it had direct sale of agricultural products grown and or produced on or off site. And then I just included the next, everything else is the same. I just included one more sentence, which says examples of agricultural products grown and produced off site, including but are not limited to fruits and vegetables, seasonal flowers and trees. Just to provide some intent of what we're talking about for off site. Agricultural type produce and things like that. And right,
So
we talked
that's
about
in
this.
mine. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so what I did was I actually had communications repost the agenda. Grant and I talked about this late, and I said, well, you might want to double check that and make sure I'm not doing something wrong. So the packet that went out on Friday did not include this last sentence, but the packet was reposted.
And there's something of an esoteric rule in the commission's rules here that say that after it's published, the agenda is yours, and so there's a specific process that we have to follow. I apologize for this being confusing. We didn't notice the oversight until today, and so this is the way to fix that.
Can I ask a question about the wording now, or do we need to vote on something else first?
That's the chair, up to the chair to decide.
Before we vote to include this in, I think it would make sense to have a discussion about what this is. So I think, Jessica, this is a perfect time to ask that question.
I just wasn't sure if we had a procedural vote first too. This might be a question from someone who did not grow up rural at all. Is it well defined that agricultural does not include animals? That it seems like we're only talking about plant related activities, right? Like, is that well understood that this?
So it does include animals, and okay. I'll be honest. And I shared with Katie and Dean when we went out there. It's like, you know, we're in a matter of trying to protect things, you know, that aren't intended from happening. That maybe somebody else buys this property in 25 years, and you know, as written by the first sentence, without that second sentence, you could technically park a semi-trailer on there and sell steaks out of there, and right, because livestock is part of an agricultural use, and so.
Right. So is there any sort of limitation to like live animals, for instance, like they can have a petting zoo, but can they graze cattle?
I mean, technically that's part of an agricultural use. Yeah, anybody in the city that has ID zoning could now.
Agriculture is defined in 16701 up above, right, as well.
So
I'm sorry. Yep.
It seems like this is trying to be more limiting than ID zoning, so that like it's more defined on what the land can be used for, where ID is pretty open. I guess it seems like I feel bad because I know you put a ton of work into this,
Nope,
but
this is part of-
it seems strange to me that we're so specific about what kind of uses can happen for like berry picking or pumpkin patches, but there's nothing mentioned about like what kind of animal uses might be in this agricultural experience.
Does this also include like people, who maybe have raised puppies and want to sell puppies? Would that fall into this category that they would need to get a conditional use permit for that?
Nope, we are actually defining what livestock is, and that was part of our ordinance amendments. But I mean, it's really limited to cows, horses, poultry, pigs, those types of things. And hopefully this makes you feel a little bit better. We also defined an animal confinement area and specifically listed that as a prohibited use in the ID zoning. And so, in order to, by moving forward with this, we no longer have or allow for confined animals. So they'd have to be, what we're talking about, in an open pasture or something like that.
But it would just be agricultural animals.
Yep.
Okay. And how does it affect the current process we have to allow people to apply to do a chicken coop? Is that affected with this?
Not at all.
Okay.
And keep in mind, you have your agricultural use, which is predominantly in the city is farming. We don't have a lot of grazing animals. And so that would be allowed, and most people in the ID zoning would continue to farm. And so you just look at this as being a allowable use within that specific district. And also we define agricultural experience as being accessory to a primary agricultural pursuit. So it's not like the entire property would become kind of a fairground, so to speak, if you will, because there has to be a bona fide agricultural use on the property. But these are great questions, and you're seeing some of the challenges that kind of popped up as we were writing this. It was a big challenge.
Are on-farm weddings considered agriculture, or are they non-agricultural?
So that's a great question, right? And so that was something that Katie Dean and myself had debated a lot. And that was another reason that we kind of had some concern of, in this context, we are saying, yes, it is. But, you could take that, I think the example I used as well, you could essentially, because it's on a farm, right? I think the argument was made that, hey, we're having a wedding on the farm, therefore it's an agricultural experience. But it's like, well, where could somebody take that? I could bring used cars out here and sell used cars and then say, well, it's part of an agricultural experience. So the two biggest things that I point out is the definition of agricultural experience, and I can scroll back up to that for you, and we can take a look at livestock as well. And these uses that are right here of A through H. And so if you fall outside of these, you could do something like, I believe the colonies do like a 5K race out at the farm. So that could be something as part of their 12 non-agricultural related results per calendar year, and they would just apply for permits. Now, this is a unique ordinance because it's in the city, and I think most of these are written for unincorporated areas in the county. And in fact, the state legislature said counties can't prohibit agricultural experiences from happening. But I basically pulled from a couple of templates that I liked, and then kind of built from that.
Before we start talking about this more, I would like to call for a motion on, we're just voting on C, right? Including C in the amendment. Okay, I'm seeing some nods here, so I just want to double check. So may I have a motion regarding,
So this would be section
C.
170,
Thank you.
170.071C.
thank you, regarding section 170.07 1C.
I'll make a motion to modify the agenda item, section 170.07 1C to correct the clerical error.
I'll second.
Great, motion by Pentecost, second by Staber. Roll call.
Marks,
Aye.
Heisler,
I,
Staber,
Aye.
Pentecost,
Aye.
Ahern.
Aye.
Keo.
Aye. All right, motion passes. So now 170.071C is included. I do want to ask Ryan, the city, that's also the applicant here?
Yes.
Great, so now I'm going to ask for if there's any public comment.
I do see Katie's name. I assume Dean is also with her, but I don't know. Dean and Katie, are you on?
If you want to speak, you can. You don't have to.
We are here. I don't know that we have anything we need to add, but if there's anything that we need to clarify or have questions for, we'd be happy to do that. We've been working real hard with Ryan over the last many months on trying to make this work mutually for the city, as well as being able to keep a historic part of North Liberty here. So
Thank you.
I just want to thank Brian for all the hard work. We've brought a lot of different obstacles to him and challenges and just different thoughts and insights to make sure the city and us both have thought this thing through at every angle, I guess. So I want to thank Brian for all the work he's done.
Yeah, I think the thing we kept kind of reminding each other is, we both, this you have my word or something like that. And it's just in order to protect ourselves. Who knows what happens to me? I get hit by a bus tomorrow and someone comes in and now is left with this, ordinance, which they have to administer. So we really tried to work hard and collaborate on trying to get that language as good as we possibly could.
Great, thank you. Commission, I didn't want to stop the great conversation that was happening, but I just wanted to get that procedural part taken care of. So any further questions and comments from the commission?
I have two more questions. So in terms of I know there's areas where there's community gardens. Does this impact them?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay. And then in the past and in previous years, there had been a farmer's market over by the community center. Does this impact the ability for somebody to organize a farmer's market as well?
I assume you're talking about the one that's existing. No, it wouldn't, but it would be an allowable use to sell like fruits and vegetables on this property as part of an agricultural use. So in some sense, I guess I could say it may have the potential for impact, but indirectly, just because of, the market might get saturated. Like for instance, Grant and I talked that Iowa City has a very nice one, and we probably wouldn't get that large just because we don't draw from that many community members. But the idea is that you're on the farm and you'd be able to sell agricultural products that are grown on site and potentially off site if somebody had some vegetables or there's a good sweet corn stand that comes out that I can't wait for on Penn Street, but something like that would be allowed at that site.
Okay, but do they need to get a permit? Does their process change?
So the permit, it would, no, not necessarily, no, they wouldn't need a permit. So they kind of wrap, these uses are allowed if the conditional use is granted ultimately. So we would look at this list of uses and so if the conditional use was granted, we would say, yes, you can do this use.
Okay, so they still just need to contact contact you to get the conditional use approved. Okay.
Yep, yep. Yeah, and so keep in mind, that's a great comment. You know, we do have this additional steps. We're not just creating an ordinance that anybody that has ID zoning could do this. There will be a separate process of conditional use that will be reviewed and have to be approved by the Board of Adjustment. And again, I think you get another crack at that too.
So this would allow us, if, you know, the colonies wanted to expand to another area or something, you know, that they could expand the area that they're in, or someone else wants to take an ID and do something similar. This could be applied to that as well.
That's correct.
All right. And then, I mean, I know you and the colonies have worked extremely hard, and I'm sure you have tried to think of every possible thing to put in this, but I am sure we're going to pass this. And then a year down the road, there's going to be something that we can just come in and make it a change, right? I mean, so this is, all right, perfect. I just want to make sure that we're not, you know, limiting some of the things that could come up, because I mean, every year at the colonies, there's something new and exciting and different. And that's what I think, you know, draws everybody in. And I want to make sure that they can still do that, right? I mean, it's a very important thing for the city.
Yeah, and that, thank you for making that point, because, you know, that was a lot of what our conversation was. And they were very clear of, you know, they're constantly innovating out there.
Yeah.
We're not exactly sure what, you know, 5 years looks like. And so I tried my absolute best to try and be inclusive, but you're right. You know, something could come up that just like, wow, I didn't even think about that. It happens. And if that's the case, we'll come back to you with an ordinance amendment and then fix it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Pat, because I saw I think it was alcohol production, and not that I'm particularly concerned about it either way, but I also, thought, well, geez, the colonies. I mean, my grandfather on his farm made wine out of just about everything. So do we necessarily want to prohibit that? That's what I wanted to see in the futures. And kudos to Ryan and Grant for this. And but I think that, fostering this kind of entrepreneurship that the colonies are doing, and taking advantage of the resources that, the state gives young entrepreneurs a lot of resources in the agricultural sector, and thinking about where North Liberty's boundaries may end up down the road. We may be looking to incorporate other areas that, they're really more suited for ag and for, this really kind of use. And there are a lot of growing metropolitan areas, growing suburbs in Iowa that are very plastic, and I'm sure they don't have language like this in their P&Z code. And so kudos to you guys. I think this is exciting, and it's honestly it's a selling point for North Liberty, really. So that's all I got. But good work, Ryan and Grant.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from the commission?
So I usually flash my recommendation up at this point, but like I said, I didn't do a PowerPoint. So we just had one finding. The ordinance amendment would allow for agricultural use within allow for an agricultural experience use within the city limits. And again, as Barry pointed out, and thank you for pointing it out, everybody views the Colony Pumpkin patch as a North Liberty asset, but it's not actually in the city of North Liberty. So this provides for that opportunity, as well as revising outdated and onerous ordinance language. So staff recommends approval of this, and we recommend that you accept that one listed finding for the ordinance to the city council with a recommendation for approval.
Okay, excellent. May I have a motion?
Can I say so moved, or do I have to remember that?
You may.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Motion by Marks, second by Staber. Any further discussion? All right. Roll call.
Heisler,
Aye.
Staber,
Aye.
Keo,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Ahern,
Aye.
Pentecost.
Aye.
Great. Motion passes. Good work to city staff and everyone involved on that. That was fun. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the previous minutes?
I'll move to approve the previous minutes.
I'll second.
Motion by Ahern, second by Heisler. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any old business? Any new business?
The only thing I wanted to mention was Commissioners Pentecost and Pat. Their appointments are re-up. I know Pat has reapplied, but Kylie has not. So Pat, we wish you the best of luck, and Kylie just wanted to publicly express sincere gratitude for serving on this. I know the pay is not great, but I've always appreciated the comments that you made and for serving for the city of North Liberty. So thank you. Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kylie, I think tonight's a really good example of the great questions that you bring up. So yeah, it was great serving. And Pat, wish you the best of luck. Okay, if there isn't anything new, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Great. Motion by Staber, second by Ahern. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're adjourned. Have a great night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.